Let's get right into that next one. We got Michel Pereira and Niko Price. Now, funny story with Niko Price, right? Poor guy has had 2 fights overturned because of marijuana use. And, you have the Marino win and the Donald Cerrone draw, which are 2 great fights to have on your record, but both of those, unexpectedly get turned over. And now we have the entire industry shifting to not giving a shit about that. So, poor guy about that, but he talked about it at his media day. Clean living now. He doesn't even care about it. He's just feeling so much better as an athlete, so much more clear-headed. And I think he just, describes it as not having that fog and being able to throw bigger punches with that focus. That's what makes him a very scary fighter going into this one, especially from what we've seen in the past. I think that his durability has always been there. You look at some of the fighters that have finished him early on, and they're very credible strikers, right? Like, that's the big thing with Niko Price is you have to put him away. A guy like Vincent Luque, who he fought twice, wasn't able to finish him. Vincent Luque ended Tyron Woodley's UFC career. Those are the things you want to take away when you look at a guy like Niko Price, crash test dummy galore. But, Abdul Razak Hassan finished him in under a minute, and Jeff Neal finished him in just about 1.5 rounds. So for me, it's like those are the things, like what are those guys doing well? Just like Vincent Luque that, Michel Pereira can employ in this fight. When you talk about a guy like Michel Pereira, right, that Chaos Williams victory was such a feather in the cap for him because I think the unorthodox aspect of his game actually rang true as a game plan. He kept a guy like Chaos Williams so far off of his comfort zone that it was just really hard for him to land anything big. And so he was able to work in some takedowns. He was able to get Chaos to his back, force him to, use some of that energy to get back to his feet. And you know what? Chaos Williams was in the fight the whole time, but it's just about where Pereira can take the fight, how his movement just really dictates the pace, whether you like it or not. You're going to be fighting his fight when it comes to those things. Canadian brother, I want to talk about how well Tristan Connolly was able to deal with that type of game plan. The very infamous Mario meme or meme video, whatever you want to call it, that's been going around with the boom, boom. That's all against Tristan Connolly, and Connolly actually ends up winning that fight. The backflip onto what could be a double foot stomp to the gut. I don't know what that was, but all of that aside, Tristan Connolly kept it simple. When the fight was on the feet, he landed cleanly, he landed the bigger shots, and was able to pull off a very clean victory in what looked like a very messy fight. But like I said, you go to the Chaos Williams fight, you have an example of where that movement and that all of that type of speed and ingenuity, if you will, actually plays a huge role in his game plan and being able to pull off big victories. And that for me is where I really have such a tough call here, because I think Niko Price has the basics down in terms of how to beat him, but Tristan Connolly was so fundamental. His guard was up. His movement and his jabs were landing as they needed to in terms of timing. Niko's going to have to put that same type of effort in. It's going to be all about timing. It's going to be all about timing movement, because Michel Pereira is going to be moving around this octagon like he's, in Cirque du Soleil. And in this case, how do you avoid that? If he's just jumping around crazy and not landing anything, well, that's going to get a lot of boos and maybe some referee attention. Don't play into those things, because I think that's where Chaos Williams was just such an aggressive fighter that after all of the amazing fights he had in the UFC, he just got caught in that game. And, in his return since then, he looked a lot better. I just see a lot of potential in Niko Price here. I think that with him switching up the game and getting a bit more clean, only at 31 years old, there's a very real opportunity here for him to pull off what I'm going to assume should be an upset. Because when you look at Michel Pereira, I mean, again, another 27-year-old fighter, the only 2 losses are the illegal knee to Diego Sanchez, where he was dominating that fight, and then the Tristan Connolly fight that we just talked about. Dusko Todorovic knocked him out on the regional scene. But this is the big part that really makes me, for a guy that kind of looks unbeatable in like, almost comical ways, I think Tristan Connolly just shut that show up without any doubts whatsoever. And that's what Niko Price has to do. He has to get in there. He has to make it dirty and brawl. It's kind of the same thing with Ryan Hall, right? If you're going to fight a technical battle with a guy like Ryan Hall, you're probably not going to come out with a win. You have to make these a brawl. And I think with Michel Pereira, it's the same thing. Just avoid taking such big opportunities where he's going to time a takedown. He's going to be able to get one of these flying, punches off of the fence on you. Those are all part of the show. But if you're able to see the show and just work with it, time things out properly, and have that movement down, I think that's where Niko's going to have a lot of success in. With Michel Pereira, it's very much a lot of the same thing. I think his game plan always looks the same. So it's all about how his opponent deals with him. So in this case, if he's able to get that movement around and Niko's kind of flat-footed, I mean, his strikes are very clean, and he's able to do a lot of things some people are not willing to do in the UFC. So that's where I think he always finds success. It's just about how much can the other fighter neutralize what all that movement and funny stuff kind of does, which is exactly what Tristan Connolly did. So I believe there's clear paths to victory, both guys. If Niko Price is flat-footed, not keeping his hands up, he has been caught in the past. I think Michel Pereira can absolutely take this fight in a big way. But then on the flip side, when you look at Tristan Connolly and his game plan in that fight, despite everything that you might have seen there, it's all about the fundies. The fundamentals were key, getting that jab working, making him work for everything. Make him work for the movement, even to sidestep or run off the fence or whatever it is. Make him work for those things. And I think you will easily be able to put Michel Pereira off of his game. So with that said, I mean, before we even take a look, I think I'm leaning Michel Pereira here. I think that in the fights that we've seen of him, there's just so much to rave about the good that comes from his fights. And I'm not just saying from an excitement perspective. There is some very clean technical skill there, whether you see it or not. It definitely comes up. But I do like Niko Price in this fight as well, just the style that he has, but it's all about fundies, man. Keep the guard up and keep it simple, because he's not going to be doing that. So let's take a quick look. I mean, this line kind of opened a lot closer. So Pereira, like we said, was a minus 130 favorite. Niko Price is a plus 110 dog, but this line is separating big time. Michel Pereira is now sitting in that minus 165 to the minus 175 range, with Niko Price now looking at that plus 135, plus 145 range. So a lot of movement in that line when you think about where things are going. Michel Pereira is probably a fan favorite. I don't like using the word casual, but in the way that he fights, I can see him getting a lot of attention through social media and things like that. But like I said, Niko Price, if he brings those fundies to the table the way he has against some big name fighters in the UFC, I think there's a lot of opportunity for him to pull off this upset. And it's a fight to keep an eye on, because I think both of these guys are in a position to take a big leap when it comes to the next fight, and a win's going to help them do that.